Children Who Don't Survive Domestic Violence Part 2. And today I want to tell you about 5-year-old Coy Green, 4-year-old Kaleigh Green, 19-year-old Chadney Allen, and 17-year-old Kara Allen. But in order to tell you about them, I first unfortunately have to tell you about a man named Gregory Green. I've talked about Gregory Green on my page before, but in light of the new series I've started on my account, I felt like those children absolutely deserved a spot. So let's get into it. Now, in order to tell you about Gregory Green, we have to go all the way back to 1991. In 1991, Gregory Green met and married a woman named Tanya Clayton. Tanya and Gregory's relationship was described as rocky. However, Tanya, who had 2 children from a previous relationship, felt like she saw a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel when she found out she was pregnant with her and Gregory's first child together. However, after only 6 months of pregnancy, Gregory's behavior became increasingly controlling and abusive, and that prompted Tanya to begin to contemplate the possibility of leaving Gregory. Before that could happen, on July 14th, 1991, Gregory took a steak knife and brutally stabbed Tanya 10 times in her cheek, neck, chest, and back, resulting not only in the death of her, but also in the death of their unborn child. After committing the crime, Gregory would pick up the phone, call 911, and calmly tell the operator, quote, "I stabbed her, she's in the kitchen." Now, Tanya's 2 children from a previous relationship were unfortunately present at the time of the unaliving. However, they were thankfully at least left physically unharmed. Gregory was arrested, charged, and convicted of murder in 1992 and was ultimately sentenced to 15 to 20 years in prison. Now, fast forward 16 years later, and we have to introduce 2 new people, which is Faith Harris and Fred Harris. Now, Faith Harris is the daughter of Fred Harris, who was a pastor and civil rights activist. The popular pastor, who was 78 years old at the time, had begun to put pressure on the parole board in favor of Gregory Green's release. It is said that he even went as far as to write 2 separate letters on 2 separate occasions asking the parole board to release Gregory Green early. The first letter, that was written August 17, 2005, said, quote, "Gregory and I were friends before his mishap and he was incarcerated. I feel as though he is paid for his unfortunate lack of self-control and the damage he has caused as much as possible and is sorry. This will not restore the lives that were taken. He will carry that with him for the rest of his life." The second letter, written just a year later, said, quote, "I've noticed a great deal of growth, and his understanding has matured quite a bit as well as his processing skills. If he was to be released, he would be welcomed as a part of our church community, and whatever we could do to help him adjust, we would." Now, Fred Harris was not the only person writing letters in favor of Gregory Green's release. Gregory's parents, along with his sister, were also writing letters. A letter written by Gregory's parents, dated November 22, 2006, went on to say, quote, "We believe Gregory is very sorry for what he did and has gained insight into his behavior. He has worked hard in prison and continues to make a positive adjustment." A letter written by his sister, dated November 22, 2006, went on to say, quote, "Over the years, Gregory has become closer to the Lord and reads his word daily. I believe this is what has helped Greg through this difficult and trying time." Now, it is documented that there were no letters written from the years 2004 to 2008 opposing his release, only letters in favor of him being released, and prison officials did describe Gregory as somebody who followed the rules and kept his area clean. They went on to report that he interacted well with other inmates and that he had only received 1 write-up during his entire 16-year stay in prison over a fistfight with a man over the television. The parole board went on to talk about how he had family and community support and how those were things that they looked for when considering whether or not to parole someone. Gregory had completed a number of educational and psychological programs, and so, despite 4 failed parole attempts, on February 8, 2008, parole board documented that they believed that reasonable assurance existed to prove that the prisoner would not become a menace to society or a threat to public safety, and Gregory was released. And he was released on April 29, 2008. He was released despite what? What did I say? Despite 4 failed parole attempts, right? And why was he denied parole on 4 separate occasions? Over the 1991 murder of his first wife and his unborn child? He was denied parole on 4 separate occasions because it's documented that he showed little to no remorse and even went as far as to blame his victim, his first wife, for his actions. According to a report dated December 8, 2006, officials went on to document that Gregory could not explain his murderous rage and that he oddly did not utter a word of empathy or remorse. According to a report dated January 26, 2004, officials went on to document that during the parole board interview, Gregory demonstrated little emotion or remorse over his horrendous crime, that he was unable to give background on where his violence and temper came from. According to a document dated December 27, 2004, officials went on to document that despite completing recommended therapy, Gregory had still not gained adequate insight, and had even gone as far as to blame his conduct on his victim's mistreatment of him. And even by late 2006, officials had documented that Gregory had potentially gained some insight into his crime, but was blaming his actions on his, quote, past immaturity. However, despite all that, the parole board came to the conclusion in 2008 that Gregory had all of a sudden accepted his crime and that he was no longer a threat to the public, and he was released. And if you think things are crazy now, they're about to get real wild. Because only 2 years after Gregory's release from prison, Gregory and Faith Harris would get married on December 18th, 2010. Now remember, Faith Harris is the daughter of the pastor Fred Harris, who helped Gregory get released from prison. Now, Gregory and Faith's marriage was also described as rocky, similar to the marriage he had with his first wife. However, Faith, similar to Gregory's first wife, who also had 2 children from a previous relationship, also felt like she saw a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel when she had her and Gregory's 2 children that they shared together. But despite years of marriage and 2 children, Gregory's behavior became increasingly abusive and controlling, pushing Faith to begin to contemplate the possibility of leaving Gregory, similar to Gregory's first wife, going as far as to seek out divorce not only in October of 2013, but again in August of 2016. Unfortunately, only a month later, on September 21st at 1:15 in the morning, Gregory would once again call 911 and calmly explain to the operator that he had once again taken the lives of those he claimed to love. Investigators would enter into the home and find Faith tied up in the basement with tape and zip ties. Gregory tied up, assaulted, and tortured his wife before then forcing her to watch him shoot and kill her 2 oldest children, 19-year-old Chadney and 17-year-old Kara. Gregory would then proceed to go get the 2 daughters that him and Faith shared together, 5-year-old Coy and 4-year-old Kaleigh, take them out of their beds, put them in the car in the garage, and proceed to take their lives by carbon monoxide poisoning. Gregory was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count each of assault with intent to do great bodily harm, torture, unlawful imprisonment, felonious assault as a felon in possession of a firearm, and felony firearm possession. Gregory's court-appointed attorney went on to say that Gregory was planning on filing a motion for an insanity defense, which is the exact same thing he attempted to do after murdering his first wife. However, there was no information released showing the results of a mental health examination. Now, the parole board began to face backlash because the public had lots of questions. For one, they wanted to know why he was capable of being released. 2, they wanted to know why he was released early. The parole board did inform the public that Gregory had been getting time knocked off of his sentence for good behavior, so even if they had not approved his release in 2008, he would have been released anyways in 2012. However, people still wanted to know why he was released 4 years early. And people also wanted to know why he was released on parole in 2008, but had managed to get off of parole and probation by 2010. The parole board went on to release a statement that said, quote, "This incident, while tragic, happened years after he was released from our supervision." Yeah, people wanted to know why he was released from y'all's supervision so early, but I digress. They went on to say, quote, "Our parole board works hard to review the facts and information they have available at the time to determine whether they have reasonable assurance that a prisoner won't reoffend, and to make sure they make the most informed and responsible decision. It can be very difficult to predict a person's future behavior, especially throughout a person's life." Faith Green, the mother of the 4 children who lost their lives, showed up to court in a white blouse with a clear scar across her face from the torture that she endured at the hands of Gregory Green in the basement of their home, and she appeared in court to give a victim impact statement. She went on to tell Gregory that no punishment could fit the crime and that justice would come when he was burning in hell. She went on to call him a con artist, a monster, and a devil in disguise. Gregory Green was sentenced to 45 to 100 years in prison on March 1st and will not be eligible for parole for the first time until he is 97 years old. The fact that after all of that, he still has the potential to parole is... As a former child of domestic violence myself, I find it important to share the stories of children who didn't get the opportunity to go off and live their own lives like I did. And this was Coy, Kaleigh, Chadney, and Kara's story. Please make sure that you follow me, like, comment, and repost for more.